the world awoke to a single, chilling sentence. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization has been formally dissolved, effective immediately. At first, disbelief reigned, surely a hack, a hoax. But confirmation came swiftly from leaders across the West. Faces on screens were grave, words measured, but the shock was unmistakable. The security blanket that had covered Europe for over 75 years was gone. The 12th of June, 2025, marked the end of an era and the start of a far more dangerous one. In Berlin, the German chancellor spoke of unity, but fear was clear in his eyes. In Paris, the French president called for an emergency summit, demanding European sovereignty become reality overnight. The theoretical had become brutally practical. Every European leader asked, "Who will protect us now?" Across the Atlantic, the American president tried to reassure allies, but the treaty binding them was gone. The legal framework for American troops in Europe had evaporated. For decades, the US had been Europe's ultimate guarantor. Now that was a matter of political will, not obligation. The world wondered, would America retreat, leaving a power vacuum? Markets crashed, oil and gold soared, and news channels filled with anxious analysts. The collapse of NATO, once a fringe scenario, was now reality. For millions, the world felt suddenly less safe. The structures that had prevented great power war in Europe were dismantled in a day. The day the alliance died was a day of profound, unsettling change. In capitals across Europe, emergency meetings began, not in NATO's halls but in the EU's. The old certainties had vanished, replaced by a terrifying void. The promise of collective security felt hollow. The world had entered a new, uncertain age. The shock was not just political but deeply personal. The future, once predictable, was now shrouded in fog. The practical consequences hit Europe within hours. Military bases were thrown into confusion. American troops suddenly found their status unclear. Joint exercises were cancelled, intelligence channels went dark, and the backbone of European defense was severed. Political turmoil swept the continent. Leaders who had relied on NATO's shield now faced their own vulnerabilities. The EU, long an economic giant, was pressured to become a military one, without the structure or unity to do so. Could 27 nations agree on defense overnight? It seemed impossible. In North America, debate raged. Was this a chance to focus inward, or a catastrophic mistake? Canada, always tied to both the US and Europe, felt adrift. Public anxiety was palpable. From Tallinn to Toronto, people searched for reassurance that wasn't there. The collapse of NATO wasn't just a political event, it was a psychological shock. Would conscription return? Would defense budgets skyrocket? The sense of safety people had known their whole lives was gone. The world felt colder, more unpredictable. The future was suddenly uncertain for all. In Moscow, the news was met with quiet satisfaction. The Kremlin called for dialogue, but behind the words was a sense of strategic victory. For Russia, NATO's collapse was a geopolitical gift. Advisors moved quickly to exploit the power vacuum, seeking to divide Europe and leverage energy resources. Military planners saw new opportunities, no unified NATO response to fear. For China, the implications were profound. The collapse signaled Western decline and a crumbling American-led order. Beijing watched America's reaction, ready to expand its influence if the US retreated. The Russia-China partnership would likely deepen, emboldened to reshape the world order. Together, they could block Western initiatives and promote their own vision of a multipolar world. The collapse of NATO didn't just remove a military alliance, it emboldened a powerful axis ready to challenge the democratic world. The game had changed, and they were ready to make their moves. Nowhere was fear more immediate than in the Baltic states. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania had relied on NATO as an existential guarantee. With NATO gone, they woke up on the front line, without their most powerful ally. Governments declared high alert, called up reservists, and reinforced borders. Desperate calls went out for security assurances, but bilateral promises weren't enough. The fear of Russian provocation, cyber attacks, disinformation, or even manufactured crises, was immense. The red line that once deterred aggression had vanished. Military analysts gamed out scenarios. Could Russia move before Europe could respond? Poland, now a frontline state, felt exposed. Finland's security calculations were upended. The entire security architecture of Northern Europe was in ruins. The Baltic Sea, once a NATO lake, was now a tinderbox. A single spark could ignite a major conflict. For ordinary people, NATO's collapse became a source of deep anxiety. In Warsaw, a mother wondered if her son would have to fight. The peace she'd known felt fragile. In eastern Germany, an older man remembered the Berlin Wall and felt old fears return. The unity and security of the post-Cold War era seemed to unravel overnight. In the US, reactions varied. Some welcomed the end of world policing. Others mourned the loss of a band of brothers and sisters. For soldiers, the end of NATO was personal, a loss of shared purpose and trust. The psychological impact was profound. The sense of a shared Western identity was shattered. Fear and nationalism began to rise. The unity NATO fostered between peoples started to fray. The human cost was measured in lost peace of mind. In NATO's absence, a scramble for new alliances began. The EU moved to create a European defense union, but unity was elusive. Nations hesitated to give up sovereignty. Disagreements over command and strategy surfaced. Smaller, nimble pacts emerged. Baltic, Nordic and Polish states banded together, seeking UK partnership. France and Germany formed a Western European bloc, focused on autonomy. Europe became a patchwork of overlapping alliances. The US didn't abandon Europe, but shifted to selective, transactional partnerships. Bilateral deals replaced collective defense. The era of automatic security guarantees was over. The new landscape was complex and fragile. The scramble for safety led to a messy web of pacts and rivalries. Stability was replaced by uncertainty. The world order was fundamentally changed. The collapse of NATO was an incalculable loss, not just a treaty, but a community of values. It had deterred war, integrated former adversaries, and underpinned Europe's peace and prosperity. Its loss meant the end of the most successful peace project in modern history. The risk of war in Europe soared. Russia could test the fractured system. Without NATO's deterrent, miscalculations could spiral into conflict. A new arms race loomed, draining resources from social needs. Some hoped Europe would achieve true autonomy, but the path was long and risky. Weakness and disunity were more likely to invite aggression. The world became more fragmented, nationalistic, and dangerous. The stability NATO provided was precious and fragile. Its collapse unleashed the very rivalries it was built to contain. The hope for a better system was a faint candle in a storm. The lesson peace requires constant effort. If neglected, it can vanish overnight.